Well, after the end of World War II and the end of the Cold War era, governments thought they should have other soft means of checking each other's behaviors on internationally agreed behaviors and standards. That's how sanctions were mooted as foreign policy instruments for checking excesses of the state and state agencies in as far as democracy and human rights are concerned, and agreed practices governing and securing the citizens of the world. In 1948, after the evolution of the Magna Carta rules and the birth of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, which is the world constitution on human rights, violation of human rights ceased to be a domestic policy issue after signing and ratification and domestication of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Uganda has signed, ratified, and domesticated the Universal Declaration on Human Rights in our Chapter 4 of the Constitution. Therefore, issues to do with human rights violations in Uganda are no longer a monopoly of the state. In addition to that, we have other instruments that recognize crimes against humanity as crimes against the whole world. This is a principle under international humanitarian law. It's a principle under the UN Charter and as well as the Rome Statute. And these crimes against the whole world are named. They include torture, forced abductions, arbitrary arrests, causing bodily harm that can even cause mental anguish to citizens, apartheid, sexual violence, among others. So when you look at sanctions against either government or individuals, it's a pronouncement by the international community to say this is unacceptable behavior to us. So that's the origin of sanctions. And if this is unacceptable behavior, you are therefore not welcome as our visitor when it comes to travel and visa restrictions, or we shall not trade with you, and you will also not trade with our currency when it comes to economic sanctions. Government needs to do one thing. You know, when you look at the level of growing impunity in this country and the abuse of democratic rights and freedoms of the people, and the way government plays a bystander role in holding its officials to account. When you go under the preamble of our Constitution, the national objectives and directives of state policy, the democratic principles governing state policy in this country, fundamental articles like Article 1, Article 20, Article 227, and the whole of Chapter 4 of the Constitution, it prohibits all security actors and all agencies of the state from any act that violates the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people. We have subsidiary laws like the Human Rights Enforcement Act, which is supposed to be used to hold individual security officers accountable when it comes to abuse of fundamental rights and freedoms. But if you use a period under sanctions of November, December up to February, these are 4 months, the state has done nothing save for the stage-managed internal disciplinary against the military police officers who beat journalists. We know that senior officers of the military police that commanded and participated in the violations of journalists were not tried. Instead, we saw, and the comment on Facebook was that we saw light-skinned people beating journalists, commanding the beating. But the trial had only dark-skinned people. So was it a kind of racial or tribal desegregation that we saw, which was also very unfortunate. So the steps that this government needs to take include, 1, accepting responsibility, because being accountable means that you can take responsibility even where things have gone wrong. So our government needs to act in a responsible manner and accept responsibility of the things of its officers that have gone wrong. The next step is to hold these officers accountable. Government needs to be seen to take action and not stage-managed acts against junior officers. Take action against all officers that have violated the fundamental rights and freedoms of Ugandans in the stated periods. I'm sure that if these two things are done, the diplomatic relations will be restored. We are in a digital era. The evidence of human rights violations that government of Uganda has done against its people are on camera, are on internet, and the internet never forgets. So it makes no sense for the government officials to deny things whose evidence they cannot erase from the internet. It's a waste of time. And it's shaming. It includes to the bad image of our government. Let them accept responsibility because evidence is on the internet and they cannot erase it. The second call in response to the sanctions, the government is using a lame excuse that we are a foreign state. In international law and international humanitarian law and rights, and under the concept of globalization and a digitalized world, and in the auspices, under the auspices of the UN, no state can use a lame excuse of sovereignty to violate the rights of its people. Sovereignty means the people, the sovereign. And the second bit of sovereignty is the territorial integrity, the boundaries of that country. So even if you had a geographic expression with no citizens, you cannot qualify to be a nation. But no government has a right to kill its people. So the excuse of sovereignty to violate people's rights does not hold any water anywhere in the world.